Welcome everybody. We are here in Microfactory, a place like home, in the exhibition 999 Questions About Contemporary Living. We are hosted in Triennale di Milano, and as Open.Fab Lab and the Studio of Interaction Design ... we brought here 4 topics we work on and we care about, which are healthcare, kids, future living, and food. So tonight we have the pleasure to talk with Joel Cohen from the Modern Agriculture Foundation based in Tel Aviv. And he is the director of multimedia and spokesperson for the company. Thank you, Joel, for joining in.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So what are we talking about tonight? What's the objective of the Modern Agriculture Foundation?
Well, in the simplest of terms, we want to make better food for humanity.
Okay, that's quite ambitious, and I'm happy someone is working on this. And we found you because of a very interesting project on a new vision about meat. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. We're working towards sustainable meat, meaning meat that is humane, that is not adverse to the environment as far as sustainability. It is better to produce. And of course, it is healthier since it doesn't have all the nasty side effects of contemporary meat products.
Okay, so you're rethinking how we produce meat. What's the problem with what we do today?
Exactly. Well, where should I start? There are so many problems. So the problem really lies in the unsustainability of the current method. We are using 10,000 liters to produce 1 hamburger. We are cutting down the rainforests in Brazil in an alarming rate to raise millions and millions of cattle to produce meat and ship it out throughout the world. 80% of the antibiotics that are used in the world today are in animal agriculture. And we see a degradation in the oceans and a depletion to the point where the UN is now stated that by 2048 there will be more plastic than fish. We are in deep trouble unless we wake up and find a better way to produce our food.
So just to see if I get it properly, 10,000 liters of water to produce 1 hamburger?
That's correct. Taking into account that we need a lot of food for this big beast, we need to first raise the crops to feed the animal. Therefore, we have what the animal eats via the food, which needs the water as a crop, and then what the animal drinks itself within its lifespan.
Well, it's impressive when you think about it, actually. So do you have
Pretty mind-blowing, I know.
Something we can compare it with? So how much it is to produce, I don't know, a piece of cheese or something else? Just to have an idea. Do you have any data?
Absolutely. So the nice people at Oxford University conducted a feasibility study to the completion of 3 factors: energy, land, and water. And they came to a conclusion that to produce clean meat, the way we think that humanity should go with, it will take, listen to this, less than 90% water, land, and energy to produce meat with the same taste, the same nutrient balance, and it will be sustainable. Okay, so now we have 50% of the land on Earth that is livable. We have animal factory farms on it or crops for these animals, we can put people on them. We have crops in the developing world that are grown to feed all these animals that we eat in McDonald's and all these fast food places in the Western world. Now we can feed the people and essentially tackle things like world hunger, gas emissions. We have a lot of gas emissions in the form of methane, especially with beef, and several other issues that are really at the forefront of what's bothering humanity to get to an equilibrium with our food chain. And this will be an answer for all of these issues. It almost sounds too good to be true, but in fact, clean meat will be able to tackle all these issues at once.
So you were saying before, you quoted at a certain point, that the impact is worse for the developing country. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So why is that? Technically speaking, we are the one eating more meat.
Yeah. Well, we live in a world that is progressively becoming more and more controlled by corporations. And it's also the fact in the food supply chain. So these large corporations will always seek to be efficient with their funds. So they raise many, many crops where it's cheap to raise crops in developing countries. The sad fact about that is that sometimes the people in the nearby villages to these crops are dying from hunger. And then these crops go to feed the animals that we mainly consume in the Western world. So now we can go ahead and feed the people in these developing countries with the same crops that we were feeding the animals.
So it seems obvious that we have to figure out a way to change from what we're doing right now. The most obvious answer would be, in my opinion, eat less meat and eventually locally produced. So why do you think that's not enough, if you think so?
Well, there are a few challenges with the reductionist thought process. If we think about, let's say, free roaming cattle and giving animals in the animal agriculture better living conditions, so essentially having them roam in nature, this has a very bad effect on wildlife. For example, in my country, in the Golan Heights, where we have a lot of the grass-feeding areas for cows, this has come to be a very big problem to the eagles, to the jackals, and to the wolves, as the farmers, of course, want to protect their livestock, and they put on traps and, in fact, shoot the wildlife that endangers the cattle. Now, if we take off apex predators like wolves, bears, and anything that can eat free roaming cattle, we have a problem with our balanced ecosystem, and things get out of hand. Now, we can reduce, and that's definitely better than eating at the rate that we have today, where in America, the average person eats 3 hamburgers a week. So going down to 1 would definitely improve the situation. But unfortunately, all the calculations show that we need something way more drastic.
So the context seems clear, but we didn't speak about the solution. So what's the thing you're working on?
Okay, so we are planning something that will really just be magnificently simple. We're talking about meat without the slaughter. And when you don't have the slaughter, you don't have all the detrimental effects to the environment. So essentially, we take a few cells from an animal and we grow these cells in laboratory conditions in a clean environment, okay? And we produce meat. Same tasting meat, same nutrient balance, but this clean meat will not have antibiotics, growth hormones, stimulants, and cancer cells. Unfortunately, we know that many of these animals today in the industry have huge lumps of cancer cells, and people are eating these cancer cells. So we're taking all of the good stuff and keeping it in the meat, like the B12, the iron, and the protein, and we're taking all the bad stuff out of it. And the environmental effect will be enormous, saving unquantifiable amounts of water, land, and energy.
So when you grow the meat, what do you see? It looks like, you know, a piece of a muscle. How is it the meat you can grow?
So we can actually see real live products that have been grown today. And going back to 2013, when Professor Mark Post of Maastricht University in Holland grew a hamburger in a lab, it looks, tastes, and feels like the real thing, like ground beef. And going to the Bay Area in America, where the company Memphis Meats has produced a real meatball that looks, tastes, feels like a real meatball. Now, in a progress to this technology, we'll be eventually able to grow everything from the skin and the actual shape. Of course, taking out of the equation unnecessary items like bones, if needed, which people do not eat. At a later point, companies might decide that they do want to grow bones. For instance, for a whole new market such as the pet market, to supply for dog owners, so their dogs can happily nibble on a clean bone made in the lab.
Okay, this is amazing on one side and very, very weird on the other. So as a designer, I have to ask you, can you change the shape of things? So can you design a bone that has a specific look?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I think that just to let nature do its part. You see, when we have cells in place, there is no alteration on the molecular level. So in essence, this is designed to look and taste different, but we just physiology of a chicken, cattle, or fish and let nature do its course. These cells multiply and split just like they would inside the body of an animal, because we trick them to believe that they are inside the body of an animal.
Okay, now I have to ask you how you do this trick. So how can you allow meat to grow outside of the body of an animal?
Right. So let's think about something that many of us enjoy for quite a long time, and that's beer. Now, to make beer, we need several elements. Of course, we need water and hops and grains, but we also need yeast. Yeast is a living organism. It's a biologically induced organism that, with the right conditions in a beer brewing factory, will produce beer. Very similarly, in a quite simple method, we can take these cells and they will be our catalyst just like the yeast, and with the right conditions we will produce the meat.
So do you need animal products beside starting a bunch of cells to bring it on the process?
So that's a very good question, and it's actually a concern of many people from the vegan world. And I am happy to tell you that we are now transitioning into the next phase of the technology where the growth mediums will be plant-based.
Okay, so you can produce vegan meat that it's actually meat?
Exactly. It's humane meat for everyone. Now, just to put this on the table, clean meat is not made for vegans. It's made for the average Joe. It's made for anyone watching me now who enjoys a good piece of steak, but also likes to cuddle up with their cat as they watch TV in the comfort of their living room. People that can enjoy the taste, the culture aspect of consuming animal products, but yet still have the sensibility and heart to allow themselves to relate to animals in different capacities. These people will be able to enjoy guilt-free, humane meat that in fact will be as tasty, healthier, and sustainable.
So this will be the first meat that is not coming from a dead animal, is cruelty-free.
Indeed. And even Winston Churchill contemplated making this type of meat back in the beginning of the 20th century when he famously stated that in the future we will not need to breed live animals who can hurt, who can feel, who can taste, and who can smell, but we will just grow the meat for our consumption.
It seems we are getting closer to this scenario. So what if within, let's say, 10 years, this clean meat will be the new standard of the meat we will eat? What's going to change? What's going to change in the distribution, in the production? What do you think is going to happen?
So here's what I'm really excited about. We see a very, very large shift. This shift is in the conscious of the business sphere. We see the number one leading producer of meat in America, Tyson Foods, investing $150 million to the development of these types of alternative meats. We see great minds in deep pockets, such as Sir Richard Branson from England and Bill Gates investing in this technology. In fact, Bill Gates is famously quoted saying that the future of meat is vegan. So I'm very optimistic that in fact these corporations today that are in large charge of the mass production within animal agriculture understand that the market not only demands these products, but our planet deserves it.
So one of the things we speak quite often lately is the circular economy. The idea that cities are not just the ending point of products and the starting point of trash, but we figure out a way to bring back the technology that allows people to produce what they need inside the city and bring back the production and the reuse, the recycling of products in general, because being a fab lab, we are more focused on the production of objects. But it seems that there are some similarities. So in this scenario, the meat could be produced within the area of the city, am I right?
Here's what's exciting. Imagine this for locally grown. We envision a future where on your countertop, within the comfort of your home, inside your kitchen, we will have meat producing machines where you'll be able to print your own steak without the nastiness that comes with the animal agriculture aspects, and in a healthier capacity to your body. Again, with no hormones, growth stimulants, antibiotics, or cancer cells. This is clean meat. This is better meat.
So, and what about the producer of meat today? How do you think they will face this transition, if they will?
Well, that's a very good question. And to quote my good friend Paul Shapiro, the author of the seminal book Clean Meat, in the 1900s, and even further than that, backwards in the 1800s, to produce ice, people would actually go to the Great Lakes and hand cut ice. They would ice harvest, in fact. And then they would chop these huge blocks into smaller blocks and go house to house and sell people ice in the warmer months of the year. Then, with the invention of refrigeration and the ability to produce ice without having to cultivate it from these Great Lakes, the whole industry went into a large spasm, calling this new ice in refrigeration not natural. They were calling it fake. They were even calling it dangerous. But of course, today, there is nothing more mundane and natural than going to your fridge, pressing a glass into the knob, and releasing some ice for your water. We take it for granted. And that would be the same going on with clean meat. It will be mundane. It will be normal.
And do you think there's going to be the possibility to actually work on the recipes? So you were talking about a sort of medium, something that allows the meat to grow, and you were making the example of brewing beer. So in the same way as we see today a lot of small local beer producer, do you think that this could allow us to work on different tastes or different recipes?
Absolutely. You can keep an open mind about this and really envision many corners of a new interesting market. For example, exotic meats. We know that today poachers endanger many of the species of wildlife around the world, whether we're talking about rhinos or elephants, tigers. Now let's talk about tigers. Tigers are being pushed to extinction because of the use of parts of their bodies in several markets for traditional medicine. What if we can produce this tiger meat and save the tigers? Similarly, we can expand into new areas that were once animal-based, such as milk and eggs, and produce them all in a sustainable way.
Wow. Talking to you, it seems that, well, you put a lot of passion in what you're doing, so the questions comes natural. Do you really enjoy meat?
I salivate at the sight of a good steak. I think that meat is very natural to most of the cultures throughout the world. And just like anyone else, I can appreciate the process, the aspect of familyness and eating together, how food can relate and be a bridge between cultures. And this is in fact an opportunity for cooperation on a global level, because these resources that we're talking about saving, such as water, land, energy, the cleanliness of our air, these are issues that relate to every individual on the planet.
So what's your personal story? How did you join in the project?
So I actually have a background in the very vivid Israeli startup sphere, and I was lucky to attend a screening of a documentary, and really just it opened my eyes to the possibility of this amazing food technology. And how can I put this lightly? I think that clean meat is the greatest revolution to food since the agricultural revolution. And I think that it can really transform our plates, our minds, our hearts, and provide so many solutions to many of the burning problems that we have today on our planet.
So the project is amazing, and everybody is very looking and speechless, looking at looking at you and listening to what you're saying. And for me, it's the same basically. But I have a confession to make at this point. I'm vegetarian, so the idea on one side is very fascinating. On the other one, I don't know exactly how to handle it. So what's your position for that?
Well, personally, I have not consumed any meat for 6 years as a vegan. But what's exciting to me about clean meat is that it brings to the table meat eaters and vegans alike. So the inventor of this technology, Professor Mark Post, is a meat eater. And the fact that him and I can agree that this product will better everyone is a beautiful thing. We're bringing people around this table of land, energy, water use, all these issues that relate to everyone. When we talk about the oxygen in the air that's being depleted because, they're cutting down 2 football fields every second in the Amazon forest to raise this cattle, this air that goes into all of our bodies, this oxygen, it doesn't matter if you're a vegan or a meat eater, we need oxygen to survive. So I'm happy that we're at the phase of cooperation.
So a last personal question that I have to ask you. Will you try the clean meat at a certain point?
Absolutely. Can't wait to try it.
I see. Joel, thank you very much for joining in. It was great to have you here. I don't know if someone wants to ask you something. Vai.
Loro hanno fatto recentemente una produzione in Israele a fine del 2017 per incontrarsi dove c'erano anche dei produttori di carne, un grosso gruppo israeliano. E qual è la vera propensione da parte dei produttori di carne che hanno incontrato loro in Israele e poi effettivamente anche quello che le persone pensano su questo tipo di carne in quanto comunque la vedono un po' in maniera discordante in quanto sia cresciuto in laboratorio.
Okay, I will translate it.
Ho letto il libro anche di Paul Schafer che ho appena nominato.
Ah, okay. We have an expert that read the book you were quoting before.
Io so parlare poco italiano, so please do. Italiano bella lingua.
I will translate for you if that's okay for you. So, what's your name? Giacomo was saying that last year you had a meeting in Israel with the producer of meat, and he was interested in understanding what's their position about this new scenario, as well as the person, the common person, when you speak about this kind of meat that is grown in a lab. So something so common that becomes somehow alien to his natural process.
Well, thank you for your translation, and thank you, Giacomo, for your very intriguing question. Indeed, we hosted the first and international conference on the commercial feasibility of introducing clean meat into the supermarket aisles. I'm very happy to say that most of the interest was generated from meat producing companies who see the decline of several of their products, mainly processed meat products that have now been linked to a whole array of nutritional problems. And these are the people that we're working with. So Supermeat, for example, which is the Israeli startup which has been founded on the world's first feasibility study in clean meat produced from chicken, has now joined hands with Germany's largest chicken producer. So again, it's a beautiful thing. We're talking about corporation and startup, and this cooperation between the two spheres into the future will lead to, who knows, clean meat at McDonald's. We're like a Trojan horse, but instead of coming out fighting with our swords, we're coming out and shaking hands and cooperating. I think that everyone can agree on the benefits of this product.
So what about the feedback you get from people that are not technical people, but you say the everyday person on the street?
So yeah, very interestingly, when this whole new area of food tech, cellular agriculture, came into public perception back in 2013, there was a bit of a yuck factor. People didn't understand if this is Franken meat or lab meat or synthetic meat, or all of these derogatory terms were thrown in the air, basically because there were misconceptions out in the air. Now, the media has done a large part to clear these misconceptions, and we see the trend shifting drastically. So in the last Gallup poll that I read, 2/3 of Americans are ready to try clean meat on a regular basis. And the numbers are rising. People understand that this is not a GMO product. They understand that they will have a chance to eat meat that is not made from plants. We're not talking about boca meat or soy meat. We're talking about real meat, same tasting meat, without the humane cruelty. And that's exciting to most people. So we definitely see the trend getting better as we progress, when people are learning the facts about clean meat. And you can expect many talkbacks and comments on all the companies' social media platforms, such as, when can we have this meat already? That's the narrative that we are seeing today.
That's great. Any other question?
Sì, se vede la nascita di altre aziende oltre a Memphis Meat, Mosa Meat, Super Meat, che sono le tre startup che oggi lavorano a questo, nella carne oppure anche nel pesce, ce n'è una che si chiama Less Food, se ne vede che cioè, se ci sono altri team nel mondo che stanno lavorando al riguardo, oltre a queste tre che sono un po' più note nei media.
Okay. Giacomo's asking if you know or you see other startups besides the three main startups working at the moment, plus the one with fish.
Oh yeah.
Super Meat, Less Food, se ci sono altri.
Okay.
Sulla carne, nuove ancora di stealth.
Did you hear a bit about it?
So I'll give you a umbrella kind of vision of what's going on today. It's ever changing, ever growing, ever evolving, but there are close to 10 companies in the field now. There is one in Japan. There is one in Russia. There are several in the United States, a few in Israel. We have an interest from Scandinavia, and it's just growing. So it could be a new one a month from now that will spring up. So I always have my attentions, my antennas to the media to hear about the new and exciting company that starts in the field. To give you an example of a recent company that just came into the market, it's called Finless Foods, are working in the amazing space of tuna. So they want to create clean tuna fish. So sushi without the heavy metals that have been linked to dementia that people are eating with fish now in our polluted oceans. And I envision that many more companies will follow. See, we're talking about eventually localized plus big companies, but it's a very open market, an accepting market with many possibilities. And unsurprisingly, people like Bill Gates and Richard Branson and Tyson Foods are coming into this sphere, and they're going to open the door for many, many more investors, which will try to pick and choose scientists around the world and start up new entities in the business of clean meat. Food tech, by many magazines and blogs and people that are inside the business community, such as Forbes magazine, which has stated that food tech is the hottest trend now in Silicon Valley.
Thank you very much.
L'ultimissima,
Last question.
a luglio al New Harvest, che è un'associazione come loro, all'MIT Media Lab, che sarà in luglio. New Harvest Conference.
Will you be in the MIT in July at the MIT Media Lab, right?
Sì, New Harvest Conference.
At the New Harvest Conference.
Yeah, so New Harvest is a strategic friend of ours, another NPO, which we're in very good relations with. I hope to make it. It looks like I will be able to clear some time for that. There are so many things on my plate, so to speak, right now, and hopefully so.
Okay, good. You will meet there, apparently.
Are you guys planning on making it?
He is, yes.
Oh, great. Okay.
Good. Very good.
So feel free to touch base with me on email and such if you would like to meet for coffee the day of or a day before in case I make it. It will be my pleasure.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Joel,
you,
for
guys.
joining.
Thank you so much for the interest.
Good luck. Talk to you
To
soon.
all of us. Alrighty.
Bye.
Good talking to you. Ciao.